Hi, this is Mike Cicchini with DenaGeek.com, and we're here at San Diego Comic-Con with Tom King and Mitch Gerads, the writer-artist team of Mr. Miracle. How was a book this out there and this crazy pitched?
Mitch and I were supposed to do something called The War of Jokes and Riddles, which ended up being a Batman story. And we had planned it out, and it was supposed to be sort of this dark, a dark series, like sort of The Wired in comics, which was going to be great for Mitch. And my editor called me, and we were like, we have great news for you. And I was like, yeah, what's the great news? And they're like, we want you to do Jokes and Riddles in the main series, and Mikhail Yanin will draw it. I was like, that's you just canceled my book. And they're like, no, it's great. And so I went to drinks with Dan DiDio, who's so much older than me, my goodness. So I was like, this will be easy because I can out drink him on the table, then I can get him to do whatever I want. And then he drunk me under the table, and I was washed out of my mind, and I sort of drunkenly asked, he's like, what can I make? How can I make this up to you? I was like, just give me somebody to write, and I'll write it, whatever it is, dude. And he's like, how about Mr. Miracle? And I'm like, all right, cool. And I don't think we've pitched anything since then.
How do you guys work together? Because so much of this book feels like it's almost experimental. With, I mean, you had like half an issue where there's all this cosmic mayhem happening, and Barda and Scott are talking about remodeling their house. You know, so how does stuff like that come together? Because so much of that falls on your shoulders.
It's funny. Like, a lot of people ask, like, oh, do you guys like talk on the phone all the time? Well, and we text and direct message on Twitter and stuff like daily, but like not really about the book. I get a script and I read it, and I'm like 99% sure. I'm like, I know what Tom's thinking, and I feel like he's the same way. He's like, I know kind of what Mitch might draw, and then we both try to top each other.
So what do you think is the ultimate message of your Mr. Miracle?
When I was, so what happened to me, I mean, how Mr. Miracle started out, what was in like April of 16, I had one of those like first season of Soprano panic attacks, like one of those ones where you think you're gonna die and you end up in the hospital and you're like begging the doctor. You're like, I'm either dying or crazy, so please tell me I'm crazy. And the doctor's like, don't worry, you're just insane. You're like, oh, thank God. And so like I had that moment, and literally after that, the world turned upside down, like both in politics and sports, and just like things happened that I didn't think could be possible in my lifetime. And it felt to me that there was some disconnect between me inside, and it was creating an anxiety. And how do you sort of deal with that anxiety? And how do you deal with a world that sort of seems like it's falling apart around you? And I found myself putting myself back together, both it just in terms of my mental capacity, by sort of turning to my family and turning to my children. And so that's what it's about. It's sort of about putting yourself back together in a time of anxiety, and being able to live your life in a time of anxiety, hopefully.
How did you challenge yourself to kind of, to get that across in the context of all of these strange cosmic characters?
Yeah. The real strength is that Barda and Scott are the only two gods that don't want to be gods. They just want to be normal people and have their house in the suburbs and their cats and all that, the grand American dream. And so that's kind of the reader's way into that normalcy. But like, again, they're also gods, come from the fourth world, this crazy place of gods. Glitch effects that happen every once in a while, the Dark Side Is panels, which force you to stop and kind of live that anxiety for that one panel. Like, you can't go anywhere else, you have to stop there. And so there's all those little tricks to kind of make people a little bit uncomfortable. Most fun part of the book is not the idea of making people uncomfortable, but the idea of really imparting an emotional response just from a comic book.